Vidhammer Fantasy.
Welcome back to another Vidhammer Battle Report. This is Spudlow, and in this video we'll be covering a third round matchup between the High Elves and Orcs in a tournament at Dark Side Comics in Sarasota that was held in April of 2012. This was a 2,350-point meeting engagement scenario using the 8th edition rules, with additional battle points for destroying all the opposing core units, all the special units, and all the rare units. Additional objective points are given if the general or general's unit kills the opposing general, but getting run down after combat doesn't count, and also if your general is alive and not fleeing at the end of the game. As a special rule for the scenario, when units are rolled for to determine reserves, the general automatically starts on the table. I didn't find any evidence that either side actually rolled for the reserves element, but at least it was even. The High Elves win the starting roll and begin setting up their army. They start with a unit of 9 Illyrian Reavers and follow with 2 units of 20 Lothern Sea Guard. 20 archers come down behind the house, then 20 Phoenix Guard at the center of their battle line, and finally 7 Shadow Warriors in front of the house. Their characters consist of a level 3 Archmage in the upper Sea Guard, and a level 4 Archmage that's the general in the lower Sea Guard, 1 Noble in the Phoenix Guard, and another Noble with a Reaver Bow that goes with the archers. For the Orcs, they start with a unit of 35 Night Goblins that have Fanatics, then 20 Orc Boys, followed by 20 more Night Goblins that also have Fanatics, 10 Goblin Spider Riders, 2 units of 6 Goblin Wolf Riders, 20 more Orc Boys, 2 units of 10 Orc Error Boys, 25 Goblins, and finally 2 Orc Boar Chariots. Their characters consist of a level 2 Orc Shaman that goes with the upper Orc Boys, and a War Boss and BSB that go with the central Orc Boys. For spell generation, the High Elves level 4 Archmage General has the Seer's Staff of Sapphire, which allows it to choose spells instead of rolling randomly, and takes the Death Lore spells Aspect of the Dreadlord, Doom and Darkness, Fate of Buna, and the Purple Sun of Xeris. The level 3 Archmage has the Lore of Heavens and ends up with Uranon's Thunderbolt, Comet of Cassandora, and Chain Lightning. For the Orcs, the level 2 Orc Shaman gets Headbutt and Here We Go. The Orcs aren't able to steal the first turn, so the High Elves start the game, moving their cavalry and sword masters towards the big green line. Winds of Magic gives the High Elves 5 power dice against 4 dispel dice. The Archmage General uses 4 dice to cast Purple Sun of Xeris towards the lower Night Goblins at the lower level and gets Irresistible Force. The Vortex travels 24 inches and sucks up 14 goblins as it goes. The High Elves get back 4 power dice from the Vortex, but lose 3 from the Backlash along with 5 archers. They use their 2 remaining dice to attempt Comet of Cassandora, but it gets dispelled, ending the phase, with the goblins and archers passing their panic checks. For shooting, the lower Sea Guard shoot for the lower Orc archers and take out 2 models. The Shadow Warriors shoot for the upper Orc Boys for 2 wounds, and the High Elf archers shoot for the upper Orc Boys as well, with the Noble failing to wound and the rest of the unit taking out 4 models. Finally, the Illyrian Reavers take out 2 more. The lower Orc archers fail their leadership and run 7 inches, but the upper Orc Boys pass. On the Orcs' turn, they charge the lower Sea Guard with their lower Chariot, Wolf Riders, and Spider Riders. The Sea Guards stand and shoot at the spiders and get 1 unsaved wound. As a late action, the Orcs test for animosity, and the spiders fail, but the result would have been a charge anyways, with the rest of the units passing. In the compulsory phase, the lower Error Boys decided they were late for a quilting party and ran off the board. For normal moves, the Night Goblins move up and unleash their Fanatics at the Sword Masters, with their first stopping short, and the next 2 moving through the unit for a single wound. The rest of the green line moves up and turns into a bit of a squiggle. After Winds of Magic, Channeling, and the High Elves' Illyrian Crystal, the Orcs end up with 7 power dice against 8 Dispel dice. They use 5 dice to cast Edbutt, but it gets dispelled. They use their last 2 dice to attempt to dispel the Purple Sun, but the attempt fails. In the shooting phase, the lower goblins shoot for the Sword Master for 2 wounds, and the Orc Archers shoot for the Elf Archers for 1. In close combat, the Chariot causes 5 impact hits on the Sea Guard. The Sword Masters put 1 wound on the Chariot and 2 on the Wolf Riders, but they miss the Spiders. The Chariot Boars miss, the Chariot Riders do 1 wound, the Wolf Riders fail to wound, but the Wolf gets 1, and the Spiders fail to wound, but the Goblin Riders get 1. The High Elves lose the combat and get caught by the Chariot and Wolf Riders, who overrun off of the board, but the Spiders restrain and get so hung up watching the action that they forget to reform. On the second turn, the High Elves charge the lower Orc boys with their Sword Masters, and the upper Orc boys with their Illyrian Reavers, while the Sea Guard reform to go 5 wide. In the Magic phase, the Purple Sun goes after a squirrel that it saw near the Orcs' board edge. Winds of Magic gives the High Elves 3 power dice against 2 Dispel dice. They use all 3 dice to go for the Comet again and get Irresistible Force. The token comes down in front of the central goblins, and the miscast takes out a single Sea Guard. For shooting, the Shadow Warriors take out 1 Error Boy, then the Noble gets 2 with the Reaver Bow, and the rest of the archers take out 1 more. The Orcs fail their panic check and run off the board. Finally, the Sea Guard shoot for the advancing Wolf Riders for 2 wounds, but they pass their panic check. In the upper close combat, the Reavers and Horses fail to wound the Orc boys, and they take 3 in return. They lose the combat but pass their break test on a 3. In the lower combat, the Noble kills 3 Orcs, and the Sword Masters take out 5 more. The Black Orc War Boss takes out 1 Sword Master, the BSB gets 2 more, and the rest of the Orcs get 3. The Orcs lose the combat by 1, but pass their break test. The Orcs declare a charge on the Sea Guard with their wolves, the Reavers with their chariot, and the Sword Masters with their upper goblins. They move the Fanatics next, with the first moving back towards the Night Goblins. The second Fanatic decided to crash into the third one, so both were removed for crimes against nature. The charges make their distances, and for normal moves, the Spiders turn towards the Sea Guard as the lower goblins move up. A late roll for Animosity comes up, but everyone passes. For Winds of Magic, the Orcs get 3 power dice against 4 Dispel dice. The Comet comes down in a 10-inch hail of fiery Armageddon. The late Chariot and Wolf Riders are allowed to come back on the board to watch the fireworks, but all we get to see is a black shirt. Deciphering from the aftermath sees that the Comet takes out 7 goblins from the lower unit and 6 from the upper unit. 4 Orc boys and 2 Sword Masters go down, 1 hit gets put on the Chariot, and the poor Fanatic dies of fright. Back in the Orcs' Magic phase, they use all 3 dice to attempt Here We Go, but it gets dispelled. In the upper combat, the Chariot hits the Reavers for 4 wounds. The Reavers miss in retaliation, the Orc boys get 1 wound that gets saved, the Boars do 1 wound, and the Orcs on the Chariot do 1 wound to finish off the Reavers, and the Chariot overruns. In the large central melee, the Sword Masters take out 7 Orcs, the War Boss takes out 2 Sword Masters, the BSB causes 2 wounds, the remaining Orcs cause 1 wound that gets saved, and the Goblins kill 2 more. The Orcs win the combat by 2, but the High Elves pass their break check. In the final combat, the Wolf Riders impale themselves on the Sea Guard's weapons and get taken out before they get a chance to swing. On the third and final turn, the Sea Guard move up and the Shadow Warriors withdraw. Winds of Magic and Channeling gives the High Elves 7 power dice against 4 Dispel dice. They use 3 dice to attempt Uranon's Thunderbolt on the upper chariot, but it gets dispelled with dice. They use their remaining 4 dice to attempt Chain Lightning, but it gets dispelled with a scroll. For shooting, the Shadow Warriors put 1 wound on the Spider Riders, the Sea Guard wound the chariot, but it gets saved, the Noble puts 2 wounds on the chariot with a Reaver Bow, and the remaining archers cause 3 wounds, but all 3 get saved. In close combat, the Swordmasters kill off the Orc unit. They lose 3 to the War Boss and BSB, but the Goblins aren't able to finish off the Noble, but they cut him down when he runs. The Orcs have a final turn, but due to the overrunning units, they're unable to charge with the Spiders and Orc Boys, and decide to spare the Elves from another blow. The final points total saw the Orcs with the victory, and additional points for having their general survive the mass hysteria. Hope you've enjoyed this battle report. Be sure and check back for more videos each week. Do us a favor and subscribe. Leave us a message if you have any tactics or matchups that you'd like to see, and make sure you like the video if you enjoyed it. Till next time from the Vidhammer crew, keep fighting.